Más autoridades, señoras y señores, como presidente de Nueva Economía Fórum, tengo el honor de darles la bienvenida a este primer acto, este primer desayuno informativo del año del Fórum Europa que organizamos con la colaboración de Asisa, BT y Red Eléctrica de España. Permítanme que antes de comenzar el acto les proponga un minuto de silencio por las víctimas de los atentados terroristas en Francia y por la libertad. Hoy tenemos el honor de recibir en esta tribuna, por segunda vez, al Secretario General de la Organización Mundial de Turismo de Naciones Unidas, Mr. Taleb Rifai, al que va a presentar y de agradecérselo con nuestra enhorabuena por haber asumido hace poco tiempo sus funciones de Secretario de Estado de Asuntos Exteriores, a don Ignacio Ibáñez. Querido Ignacio, la tribuna es suya.
Señores embajadores, señor secretario general, señoras y señores, mi presencia hoy aquí se explica por cumplir un encargo del ministro de Asuntos Exteriores y Cooperación. El ministro García Margallo hubiera deseado estar hoy con todos ustedes para presentar en este prestigioso foro Nueva Economía a su buen amigo, el secretario general de la Organización Mundial de Turismo, el doctor Taleb Rifai. Ello, sin embargo, no le ha sido posible porque está realizando una gira por Oriente Medio, una gira que ha comenzado precisamente en el país de origen del secretario general, Jordania, y que le llevará también a Palestina e Israel. Ello me brinda a mí la oportunidad de ser el encargado de presentar a Taleb Rifai, el funcionario de más alto rango de Naciones Unidas en España. Desde 2009, el doctor Rifai tiene a su cargo no solamente la gestión de la única agencia de Naciones Unidas cuya sede principal se encuentra en territorio español, la Organización Mundial de Turismo, sino la de representar en nuestro país a todo el sistema de Naciones Unidas. Ello en un año en el que España regresa al máximo órgano de las Naciones Unidas, que es el Consejo de Seguridad, tiene sin duda una gran importancia. Permítame por ello que en primer lugar les haga una presentación del impresionante currículo del secretario general para a continuación darles dos pinceladas sobre la importancia que concedemos en España a la OMT. El señor Taleb Rifai es arquitecto de formación y ha ejercido como arquitecto y urbanista en Jordania y en los Estados Unidos de América. Es doctor en urbanismo y ordenación regional por la Universidad de Pensilvania, en Filadelfia. Tiene un máster en Ingeniería y Arquitectura por el Illinois Institute of Technology de Chicago y es licenciado en Arquitectura Técnica Superior por la Universidad del Cairo, Egipto. Al principio de su carrera ejerció como arquitecto y urbanista en Jordania y en los Estados Unidos, labor que compatibilizó con la enseñanza, siendo profesor de arquitectura en la Universidad de Jordania e impartiendo cursos en Filadelfia, Chicago y Cambridge. Cuando ejercía de arquitecto, ganó varios concursos internacionales y supervisó numerosos proyectos, en particular de rehabilitación y renovación de cascos urbanos antiguos. Es durante su estancia en Estados Unidos cuando comienza a trabajar también para el sector público jordano, participando activamente en la preparación de políticas y en la elaboración de estrategias comerciales y de inversión en su calidad de director de la Misión Económica de Jordania en Washington. En 1995 fue nombrado director general de la recién creada Sociedad de Fomento de las Inversiones, responsable de elaborar y aplicar políticas encaminadas a atraer inversión extranjera directa a Jordania. Tras ello, fue director general de la empresa de cementos de Jordania, una de las mayores empresas de capital público del país, con más de 4.000 empleados. Entre los años 1999 y 2003, el señor Rifai da un salto en su carrera, ocupando varias carteras ministeriales en el Gobierno de Jordania. Primero, fue ministro de Planificación y Cooperación Internacional, a cargo de las actividades de desarrollo de Jordania y de las relaciones bilaterales y multilaterales con los países y los organismos donantes. Posteriormente, fue nombrado ministro de Información, a cargo de la comunicación y de los medios de difusión públicos, etapa durante la cual reestructuró la red de televisión de Jordania. En 2001, su cartera se amplió al Ministerio de Turismo y Antigüedades. Durante su mandato como ministro de Turismo y Antigüedades, el señor Rifai, en colaboración con la UNESCO y el Banco Mundial, creó el primer parque arqueológico de Jordania en la antigua ciudad de Petra. También llevó a cabo varios proyectos de gran envergadura en Jerash, el Mar Muerto y Wadi Rum. En su calidad de ministro de Turismo, fue elegido presidente del Consejo Ejecutivo de la OMT en 2001. En 2003, vuelve el señor Rifai a dar un importante giro a su vida, iniciando su experiencia multilateral, al ser designado como subdirector general de la Organización Internacional del Trabajo, OIT, Organización de la Familia de Naciones Unidas con sede en Ginebra. Ocupa este puesto durante 3 años. Entre sus responsabilidades figuraba la supervisión general y la aplicación de las normas internacionales del trabajo, así como el asesoramiento sobre mercados de trabajo y políticas de empleo, en particular en la región de Oriente Medio. Y es en enero de 2006 cuando el doctor Rifai desembarca en Madrid. Lo hace, en primer lugar, como secretario general adjunto de la OMT, puesto que ocupa entre enero de 2006 y 2009. Tras ello, en marzo de 2009, asume el cargo de secretario general de la organización, primero en funciones hasta diciembre de 2009 y posteriormente durante su primer mandato, que se extiende de 2010 hasta 2013. En su 20ª reunión, celebrada en agosto de 2013 en las Cataratas de Victoria, entre Zambia y Zimbabue, la Asamblea de la OMT le volvió a elegir para un segundo mandato de otros 4 años, a partir de enero de 2014, mandato en el que nos encontramos en la actualidad. Como han podido comprobar, la variada experiencia profesional del doctor Rifai ofrece una sólida combinación de conocimientos técnicos y experiencia política en la esfera del turismo, así como en el trabajo y funcionamiento de los organismos internacionales. Junto a ello, los 2 valores que yo quisiera destacar de la personalidad del doctor Rifai y de su quehacer profesional que hacen de él un secretario general difícilmente superable son su capacidad de crear consenso y su espíritu modernizador. Su capacidad de generar consenso parte, a mi juicio, de una forma de ser muy mediterránea y muy jordana, que se apoya en una extrema amabilidad y un gran respeto hacia el otro. Ello genera una empatía para el diálogo que creo que todos los que tenemos la fortuna de conocer y trabajar con Taleb Rifai apreciamos y valoramos. Reconozco que he tenido la suerte de conocer a gente que trabaja y convive con Taleb, y todos confesamos que tiene algo al pedir o sugerir que hace que sea casi imposible decirle que no. El segundo valor de su permanente voluntad de reforma es de reformar las instituciones para asegurar que cumpla con sus cometidos y aspiraciones. Supongo que ello le viene de su formación como arquitecto y le lleva a tratar de mejorar los procedimientos y las estructuras para que sean cada vez más eficaces. La adopción en la OMT de su libro blanco, un proyecto de reforma presentado en 2009, es un buen ejemplo de ello. En exteriores consideramos al señor Taleb Rifai como la cabeza visible de Naciones Unidas en España, algo así como el padre local de esa gran familia de oficinas, programas y agencias. Su colaboración y trabajo de coordinación resulta inestimable. El señor Rifai es considerado de todos nosotros, ante todo, como un buen amigo. La OMT es una agencia especial para España. Como Estado sede, tenemos un puesto permanente en su Consejo de Administración. Además, España es el principal contribuyente a la OMT, la agencia especializada en uno de los sectores más importantes de la economía española, el turismo. El señor Rifai es consciente de la importancia que para nosotros tiene el sector económico turístico, en términos de empleo, producción, crecimiento, captación de divisas y sostenibilidad, así como de lo importante que es para nosotros que esta actividad empresarial se desarrolle de manera que no solo sea rentable, sino sobre todo sostenible y responsable. Por todo ello, estamos muy contentos de poder estar hoy aquí para escuchar al Secretario General de la OMT, que seguramente nos va a presentar muchas ideas sugerentes de cómo seguir desarrollando esta labor de cooperación entre nuestro país y la OMT. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, don Ignacio Ibáñez, por su amable introducción. Muchas gracias a la organización, particularly José Luis Rodríguez. I thank you so much for your wonderful organization every time. Es un placer estar aquí con ustedes esta mañana. Señores y señoras, queridos amigos, muchas gracias a todos por su asistencia. I think, with your permission, I'd like to turn to a language that I feel a little bit more capable of communicating through. And I apologize in advance for having to have some of you maybe have to use the interpretation gadget. I thank you for your understanding. Let me start by thanking Ignacio. And I call him Ignacio because he truly has become a friend. This should not be seen as trying to simply respond to the kind words that he said, but he's truly a remarkable person. Since he ascended to his new position at the Foreign Ministry, I've been following his steps, and particularly through the process of the candidacy of Spain to the seat, non-permanent member seat of the Security Council. And I have seen exactly how he and the team that works with him, together with Minister Margallo, of course, leading the process, have been able to achieve what many people thought was a little bit tricky and a little bit difficult. And that was done with great skill and with great professionalism. I'm very proud to consider you a friend, Ignacio. Ladies and gentlemen, it is very significant and very important for me to speak here in Spain as a senior UN official, as a voice of the UN here in Spain, on the UN at the beginning of this year. Many of you may understand if I say that I had to think over in the last 3 days whether I should keep what I have written the way it is. I was having a very casual conversation with a wonderful ambassador from Sweden this morning, and she said, "You must have changed your speech after what happened in Paris 3 days ago." And my reaction was, yes, I seriously considered that. But yesterday, and after we saw what we saw, millions of people pouring into the streets and the support that was given to the idea of freedom, democracy, and dignity for human beings, I decided to keep everything as it is. Because this may have not been, in the eyes of many people, a very good start for 2015, but I beg to differ and say it probably has worked for the better. At a very heavy price, of course, at a very tragic price, but this is a historic beginning of 2015. And it is also befitting that Spain starts its mandate at the Security Council in 2015. And the connection between the two I hope to be able to make by the end of my brief presentation. I also would like to welcome here in particular the colleagues from the UN system. We have 15 agencies of the United Nations here represented in Spain, and I know that many of them are attending the breakfast this morning. I can't spot all of them in all of the tables, but I'm very grateful for their support. We work as a team, and we believe that this is an important country, a pivotal country, in building what the UN wants to build in the world of today. My dear friends, 2015 marks the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations. In 1945, the world witnessed the birth of what I would claim to be probably one of the most significant achievements of mankind ever in history. It is the first time in history, just think about it, it is the first time in history ever that a world global system is created. A system that is inclusive of everybody. In principle, in its architecture, it said every nation, all the people of the world are members of this organization, this system. Not only for the victors of the Second World War or the strong, even if some of you may perceive it that way, and some of us do perceive it that way, it is in fact designed for everybody, in principle, in architecture, by intention. So it's a great, great system. And that's the premises of what I want to start by sharing with you this morning. The system may not be perfect today, or even in its original architecture. There are so many criticisms and so many people that think that the rules have changed and they must change. But still, it is an indispensable system. The world could not survive without the UN anymore. And if there was no UN, we would have created one. This global system that I will be talking about today embodies, for the first time in history ever, the highest values of human ideals. It is based on three major principles: social progress, peace, and human rights. Never before has all the world people come together and said, these are principles that we want to cherish and keep at the forefront of our objectives. This system strives to achieve these objectives. It fails sometimes, and it makes it some other times. But it tries to achieve them for everybody, big and small, weak and strong. In principle, this system is the best hope that we have. From a UN perspective, 2015 is a very important year, not only because it marks the 70th anniversary of its birthday, but also because it marks the end of the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, and the beginning of a new era, which I'll be talking about in terms of what the UN hopes to achieve in the world of today. So it is therefore a very befitting and very appropriate to start 2015 here at the Nueva Economia, this very prestigious forum, in examining a few things related to the world that we live in. One, what are the major challenges that have transformed the world that we're in today? How is it different from 70 years ago? And I'd like to share some very provocative thoughts with you here today. Two, is the UN fitting in its 70th anniversary to perform its role of today in a rapidly changing world, and how can it do that? And three, we want to try together to see and answer the question, is the world a better place today than it was yesterday? And is the UN capable of contributing to make it a better place? That's why I think you understand now why I had so many doubts and hesitations on keeping the text the way it was after what happened 3 days ago in Paris. Let me start with the first issue, a changing world. I'd like to focus on two major transformations and suggest that they are the ones that probably have changed the way we live in the world today. And they both involve movements. One is the movement of information that created what I would call the IT revolution, the information revolution. And two is the movement of people, which created what I would call the travel revolution. And you would understand if I dedicate a little time at the end of my presentation to talk about it, because by extension, the travel revolution does include the concept of tourism and its role in the world today. The IT revolution made the flow of information fast, accessible to everyone from all over the world. By doing that, it empowered people in ways that we have never seen before. It empowered the weak and the strong, the influential and the not so influential, the young and the old. Everybody now has access to information, and information is power. It changed the rules of the game. It changed rules of power in this world, and it changed the world with it. I don't want to go much into details. I think you understand the magnitude and the importance and the significance of this very important change. The IT revolution has changed our lives, and it continues to do so. The second revolution is the travel revolution. The travel revolution connected the world and the people of the world in unprecedented ways. In 1950, 5 years after the UN was established, there were only 25 million international travelers that crossed borders in 1 year. In 2014, we will be closing this year at 1,100 million, 1.1 billion international travelers crossing borders, international borders, in one single year. That is 1 out of 7 of the people of the world making an international trip every year. This is a revolution by all means. People are on the move. There is no place under the sun that is not visited. Anywhere you want, you can go, and there you will find facilities that would welcome you. Anywhere you put your finger on the map or on the globe, you're visiting. The beauty of our differences have become more apparent. While globalization made our dreams and our hopes the same, travel and tourism made us explore our differences and the beauty of our diversity by each hosting community trying to exhibit and show off what it has special and what it has unique. It is truly a revolution. Never before in history have we seen such people's movement. So it's information moving and people moving. We're more connected because of these two revolutions. We're more informed because of these two revolutions. Therefore, we are more involved. It's a very logical conclusion. If any one of us would watch the news today, we'd think that the world is falling apart. Maybe it is in some aspects of it. Terrorism, extremism, racism, intolerance, armed conflicts, natural disasters, global warming, tsunamis, earthquakes, health crises and pandemics, poverty, inequality and injustice, unemployment, what happened in France 3 days ago, and much, much more. I can go on and the list can be big. If we wish to look at the world from that perspective, that's what we will see. But I dare say, and in spite of the events in Paris 3 days ago, the world has never been a better place. I know this may come as a provocative statement for many people that are observing and watching what's happening. But let me try to explain why am I saying this. We are living in the best of times. The future generations will definitely inherit a better world than the one we inherited from our predecessors. Why? Because today, in the interconnected world, every local regional problem or crisis is a global problem, a global concern, and therefore a global responsibility. We never, ever in history had such a state of affairs. These two great revolutions, the IT revolution and the travel revolution, made us know more about what is happening. Disasters and crises were happening all over the world, everywhere. We simply didn't hear about them. We hear about them now. We know more about what's happening. And know more about each other by traveling. We know more, we're affected more, we're concerned more, therefore we care more. Never before we have shared the same dreams and same ideals from all spots of the world. Everybody wants freedom, in spite of the voices of darkness and the voices that are trying to put us back thousands of years before. This is called globalization. For good or bad, globalization has made us come together in one world. We're in it for good or for bad, whether we like it or not. Political, social, economic, and environmental challenges anywhere are challenges and responsibilities everywhere. When a group of wonderful girls were kidnapped in Nigeria, it's a story in every household all over the world. When miners were trapped in Chile, we were watching televisions all over the world. When the tsunami hit Japan, we all outpoured our passions and our emotions and our wishes and support, actual help and support. When ISIS strikes in Iraq and Syria, it's striking our families, our sons and our daughters, everyone in this room, everyone outside of this room. When global warming happens, it's global warming. Everybody's affected. When Ebola hits in West Africa, it hits the whole world. Even the fate and the story of a wonderful nurse that is infected becomes the story of every household. Je suis Charlie yesterday is just an example of what happened. The demonstrations and the pouring of expressions that happen from all over the world, even the Middle East, Africa, Asia, Europe, America, is a standing illustration of how the world is one. For good or bad, we're in this together. We are in this together. We live in a better world, even if all the news tell us otherwise. In the past, we did not hear about it. It was not our problem. Just think, only 30 years ago, we had apartheid in South Africa. Civil rights in the United States were only achieved 50 years ago, 45 years ago. Poverty in one part of the world was not a problem to anybody else in other parts of the world. Education and health was not a right and an obligation of governments from all over the world only 50, 60 years ago. Democracy, 50, 60 years ago, was limited to a small privileged percentage of the world population. Today, it's the dream and the strive of everybody. We definitely live in a better world. And I want to stand by what I say, and I look forward to hear your reactions to this. My second point is about the UN itself and its role. As I said before, this is a unique system. It has its fault. It's not perfect. It will never be, but it's indispensable. We must have a world global system to make us better people and a better world. And because of its global nature and its interconnectivity, people around the world are increasingly looking up to the UN for answers and solutions. The UN is expected to take charge of global challenges that today can trickle down to become local challenges even at the local level. Even any small problem in any remote area all over the world becomes a UN problem. The UN is increasingly asked to get more and more involved. Ebola, climate change, local and regional and global conflict. It represents in the world today the only global legitimacy that the people of the world are ready to listen to and believe in. But how is it doing, really? To be fair, and I'm not saying this to make any excuses, we cannot judge the UN on what it has done or not done, or what it was able to do or not able to do. We must judge it also on the level of expectations of the people of the world towards it. And this level of expectation has been on the rise continuously. People are expecting more of our system, which is good, which is a healthy sign, but it makes the system look shaky, and it makes it look incapable of rising up to the level of expectations. The UN is also destined to deal with a very structural and historical dichotomy. We feel it in every UN organization that we work in, and I have felt it in the two organizations that I have worked in. We are an organization that is put together by the will of governments, financed, voted in and out, decided upon its course of action by governments. Yet, we're expected to be watching over governments' action and telling governments you've done right and you've done wrong. How can you do that? How can I tell the government of X country, you're not doing it right this way, you're violating human rights here, you're violating freedom of press here, when they are paying my salary and the salary of the people that work with me? It is a very difficult task. It's a task that needs work by consensus, very careful, very tireless, time-consuming, and we have to work tirelessly. This is not an excuse for the shortfalls of the UN, but it's just to help you understand the world that we live in and the context that we have to operate in. On January 8th of this year, only 3 days ago, the Secretary General of the United Nations submitted to the General Assembly a very important document called The Road to Dignity by 2030, Ending Poverty, Transforming All Lives, and Protecting the Planet. I invite you all to take a look at this paper. It is a result of many years and many, many people putting inputs into this paper. It will pick up from the Millennium Development Goals and lead us into the coming 15 years. Let me try to read just a few paragraphs from this very important document. It says that 2015 would be a historic monumental year, and it identifies the road to dignity, and we call it dignity because it's not really only about economic prosperity, it's about the way we live in the world today. And it identifies 6 elements to be tackled integrally, not independently: dignity, people, prosperity, planet, justice, and partnerships. It does declare that 2015 is the finishing day and year of the Millennium Development Goals, and it commits itself to keep moving in the direction of achieving those goals. Let me now conclude by what I think is my ultimate duty as head of the UNWTO to do here, which is talk a little bit more about the travel revolution. Because I cannot end without referring to travel and by extension to tourism and to UNWTO. In light of the above, I invite you to take a look at travel and tourism as an industry with a new perspective, as an effective tool for fostering development, social progress, build tolerance and peace, and as a driver of human rights, the 3 UN objectives. The UN would not have admitted the UNWTO into its system in 2003 if it did not believe that tourism is an effective tool for sustainable development and social progress, definitely. It's an instrument for peace and tolerance and mutual understanding, and it's a promoter for human rights. But how does it do that? 1, as an effective tool for sustainable development and social progress. Tourism has provided some of the poorest countries in this world with a tool and a means of becoming equal with others and giving them a competitive advantage that they never had before. The number of visitors to the developing world is increasingly becoming a very effective tool of providing these countries with a comparative element that they did not have by utilizing what is naturally now more of a cultural and natural heritage that they possess. Today, about 50% of the 1.1 billion international travelers travel to the developing world, which is good, which makes the world more fair, more equitable. Tourism also is providing 1 out of 11 jobs from all over the world. 1 out of 11 jobs from all over the world. Every job in tourism creates another 1.4 jobs in other stream sectors of life. It is a powerful tool for sustainable development and social progress if we manage it right. And I must say, if we manage it right. But the travel revolution also has made tourism an instrument for peace, tolerance, and mutual understanding. I tell you, in one of the lectures I have attended in the last year, in 2014, there was a Spanish war correspondent that said a statement that stuck into my mind for a long period of time. He said, "I traveled the world, therefore I am a better person." Travel gives you new eyes to look at the world, and actually gives the people that you visit the opportunity to know you and to know better what the beauty of the diversity of this world is all about. It is wonderful and a more effective diplomatic tool than many of our diplomats can achieve by their direct work. It is also a promoter of human rights. We are established as an organization to promote sustainable and accessible tourism. tourism for everybody, tourism for those that can move, can walk, can see, can talk, and for those that cannot do that as well. As a promoter of human rights, we also champion the cause of gender empowerment. Let me just read to you a little, in conclusion, a little quote from a book that we produced at UNWTO called Stories of Tourism, which is a story of a very wonderful Vietnamese woman that I met on the surface of Holland Bay in 2013. This lady, and I'm going to get her name in a minute, is called Nong Thai Ba from Vietnam. She said, and I quote her, "I was born and grew up in Truong Yen commune. My family life was really difficult. My husband abandoned me for another woman when I was 3 months pregnant with our second child. Before, it was very hard for me to bring up my children. We lived mainly on cultivating several rice paddies and breeding pigs and poultry, so I had to stay up very late to make embroidery. I only wished to earn enough to bring up my 2 sons, and I had no other dreams. In recent years, besides farm work and breeding pig and poultry, I now row a boat, and I was riding on that wooden boat that this wonderful lady was rowing over the surface of Holland Bay. I saved enough money to build a new tiled roof for my house in the area of 100 square meters that can protect me from rain and storms. Above all, my sons have better and good life." And I have learned from her also something that she did not write, that she was able to get her daughter married. And that's quite expensive in a country like Vietnam. This is what tourism and travel is all about. This is why we feel that it is an industry that is designed to protect human rights, peace, dignity, and development. And that's why I need to bring it in the context of what I started to say about the role of the UN. In conclusion, my dear friends, we definitely live in a globalized world. The UN Charter starts by saying, we the people of the United Nations, we the people of the world, not the governments of the world, we the people of the world. Today, more than ever, we must unite to guarantee the values of peace, social progress, and human rights are upheld. In short, to support the UN system, the effectiveness, the sustainability of the system represents our hope for a better world and a better future. This is my message, and I hope that I can listen to what you have to say and react to this. And once again, I want to say that Spain's accession to the Security Council, Spain's increasing role in the UN system, in the global world affairs as we are seeing it today, is essential to us. Spain is representing a unique example of how a society that learns and knows how tolerance is a key for solving many of the world problems, and we can learn so much from the Spanish experience, and we are hoping and looking forward to Spain's contribution into the Security Council and into world affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, señor secretario general. Empezamos con las preguntas. Robert Head, de Reuters, Juan Ignacio Vecino, de patrimonioactual.com, Manuel Praga Líbano, de Nexotour, Blanca Pascual, de Radio Nacional de España, Daniel Tordable, de Radio Intereconomía, y Alicia Robles le preguntan, le hacen varias cuestiones acerca de las consecuencias que cree usted que pueden tener los atentados terroristas en Francia, ocurridos la semana pasada, para los destinos en países musulmanes. ¿Se beneficiarán otros países receptores, como ocurrió con los estallidos de la llamada Primavera Árabe? ¿Se beneficiará España o, por el contrario, nuestro país, en su opinión, podría verse perjudicado al ser objetivo de algunas organizaciones yihadistas? ¿Qué impacto tendrán, en su opinión, los ataques terroristas en el turismo en Europa? También le preguntan si cree que los ataques terroristas de París y la amenaza yihadista en grandes destinos europeos puede restar competitividad y hacer perder turistas en Europa. Si pueden perjudicar la evolución positiva que estaban teniendo los destinos europeos. Y si pueden tener alguna consecuencia para el turismo, ¿qué impacto tendrían estos atentados en el espacio Schengen? Sí, por favor.
Thank you so much. I think that the questions can be divided, the summation of the questions can be divided into two parts. Part number one has a political implication, which is basically the impact on the lives of people, whether it's in Europe, the Middle East, or all over the world, and particularly in Spain, as a result of the terrorist attacks. And the second one is related to tourism and the effect of such things on tourism. So let me react to the first one first. As my very good friend Ignacio just said, I come from the Middle East. I was brought up in a Muslim family as well. I understand much of the feelings of the people in that part of the world, or at least I hope I do. You have to trust me if I say that the people that are hurt most in their dignity, in their lives, in their future, in their hopes, are the people of the Middle East. They are the first victims of terrorism, and they are the first victim of extremism. And I say the people because that's the majority that really is suffering, not only from bad image, but from real life scourge and suffrage. Just look at what's happening in Syria and Iraq, and you would understand what's going on. What is happening is a result of so many years of accumulated misguided policies and frustrations that had manifested itself with this upsurge of extremism, and these forces of darkness rose in the middle of chaos and the middle of anarchy, because that's the environment that they strive in. To connect that with what I was trying to share with you this morning, because we live in an interconnected world, this has become a global problem, not only because of the terrorists' attacks, whether in Paris or in other parts of the world, but because it is a global problem. It's a global challenge, and we're in this together. We have not started seeing terrorism only in the Paris event. We have had terrorism for long periods of time, in and out. But this is the first time that we see it in such an organized fashion and such a magnified and sophisticated form that it is. And indeed, it is affecting everybody. I believe that what happened yesterday in Paris was very, very important. Many of you may have missed the news, but there were similar demonstrations in Egypt, in Jordan, in Palestine, in many, many other parts of the world, of the Islamic world, that wanted to voice their concern and their rejection, because this is not what represents them, definitely not what represents them. It is important to keep in mind that much of what can be said, much of what I can say here from this perspective, is not easy to be said when you're intimidated in your own country and in your own home and in your own base. So the lack of voices that are coming from the Middle East is not due to the lack of conviction. It is definitely very much affected by the fact that people are scared, people are intimidated. What happened in Paris made people less scared and more capable of speaking out their minds. It is because of that that I believe that probably yesterday would be a turning point. At the end of the day, the terrorists want to prove that they have done something. Well, what they have done has proven to be contrary to what they have intended to do. They don't care about world sympathy. They don't care about reputation, but they want to prove to the people of the Middle East and to the rest of the world that their thinking is right. Well, the world answered them very clearly yesterday. So I believe that yes, we should be on the alert, and yes, we need to make sure that things like this never happen again, but we need not to be intimidated, and we need to believe that people are people at the end of the day, and never, never surrender to the thoughts of discrimination, racism, or categorization, or stereotyping of any group of people all over the world. This is exactly what the terrorists want to achieve. This is exactly what they want to achieve. Now, is this going to affect the way of life of people in Europe? I don't think so. I hope it never does. Europe must continue its path towards freedom and democracy that is becoming something that the whole world is aspiring to. Will it impose some changes on travel restrictions, on the Schengen visas, on freedom of movement? It may, but people will understand. I hope it does not alter fundamentally the philosophy of freedom, including the freedom of movement. But certain procedures are not out of the question. Will it affect tourism in Europe? No, it will not. Tourism has proven to be a very resilient industry. In many cases, all over the world, we have seen instances, even in circumstances that were much more serious and much more focused and targeted than the one we have seen in Paris. Still, visitors go. Visitors are not intimidated by such events, and tourism is going to continue to be a resilient industry because it has become part of our way of life as well. Nobody is going to accept to be deprived from the right to travel, the right to relax. It's a human right now. It's not just a luxury. The right to be educated, the right to do business by traveling, the right to have leisure time. These are all very sacred in today's life, and it will not be affected by these events. People will be more careful. They will have to be more patient with some of the procedures on borders maybe. They will have to accept things that they have not accepted before, but they will continue to travel. These are my personal reflections, and I don't know if I have directly answered some of the questions or not, but these are some of the thoughts that came to my mind. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Isabel Aguilera dice, ustedes están cerrando ahora las cifras sobre la evolución del turismo internacional en 2014. Además del dato de que el número total de turistas superó los 1.100 millones, ¿qué otras tendencias y expectativas podría destacarnos de cara al año 2015? Sobre esta cuestión también le pregunta José Antonio Fernández Cuesta en términos parecidos.
Let me be a bit more specific here. I did not say the number 1.1 billion as an exact number because we will be closing the figures in 3-4 days. Still, we don't have the exact number. What we have is the number for last year, which is 1,087 million. And we have an average rate for the first 10 months of last year, which is 5%. And that's how I arrived at a rough conclusion that it will exceed 1.1 billion. But during the Fitur occasion, and I'm very glad that we have you with us, sir, we will be making the announcements as to the exact figures in that regard. As to what other than the growth is expected, we are expecting that the trend towards the developing countries will continue. The extension of market share that started 15, 20 years ago in favor of more developing countries is going to continue. The growth of youth tourism is going to continue. And I believe also that consciousness and awareness about sustainability and accessibility in tourism will become more and more of an issue. Now, There are many other details that I can go into, but mainly the major trends are that one major issue that we need to be very much aware of is the impact of social media on tourism now, which is becoming an alarming issue and an issue that we need to take very good care of. The issue of what is called collaborative services, or services that are provided directly from the service providers over the internet, are going to become a major concern to the travel and tourism industry, because it will challenge the traditional service providers, and it needs to be managed, better regulated, and this is going to be one of the major challenges that we're going to be facing in 2015 and beyond.
María José Camino, de Antena 3, dice: España bate récords en turismo. ¿Le gusta a usted el modelo de explotación turística español? ¿Lo considera sostenible a largo plazo?
Spain has probably invented the modern way term of tourism in the world today. And the evolution of Spanish tourism is a model to look at from everywhere all over the world. You need to look at it from a perspective outside of Spain to see how much respect and how much admiration there is to the model of Spain. If you judge it only from the inside, you will be doing unfair judgments on that. Spain has started with models that were imitated all over the world, and now it's come to a point where it realized that it needs to make major changes. The transformation into rediscovering the real assets of Spanish treasures, which are the cultural assets and the inland assets of Spain, is moving in the right direction. Spain is not only a sun and beach and a leisure destination along coastal lines in summer. It has been able to also tackle and deal with one of the most important challenges in travel and tourism, which is seasonality. So you can have setups, institutions, and operations work all year round instead of just 4 or 5 years of the year and the waste of investment that is there. So in all measures, we consider in the international community Spain as a model to look at, and definitely the new direction in Spain that is focusing more and more on people, on tangible and intangible cultural assets, is a direction that the world is beginning to follow as well and imitate.
Susana Ye, de Europa Press, dice: la sucesión de accidentes aéreos en aerolíneas asiáticas como AirAsia afecta, en su opinión, a la confianza del viajero en los destinos de la región.
So far it has not, and there is no reason for us to believe that it will. It is an unfortunate coincidence that 2 or 3 events happened in the same region, but history and experience has shown us that people know and realize they're much more intelligent than this. They realize that still today, flying is the safest mode of transportation, and that incidents like this can happen anywhere, any place, but that they are very exceptional and very rare. We have not seen the impact of this in the last 2 incidents, and I don't expect this to affect the travel and tourism flows into Asia.
Carlos del Teso le pregunta, señor Secretario General, lo siguiente: usted ha dicho que la bajada de los precios del petróleo tiene consecuencias positivas, pero también negativas. ¿Podría detallarnos algo más sobre esto?
I don't remember saying this in this particular forum, but yes, I did say that in another forum. So, yes, of course. The lowering of oil prices has an effect on the transportation industry in particular, and has made travel more competitive, and has enabled particularly the airline industry, more capable of becoming more innovative and more profitable, and therefore providing better services to the customers. So it will have a positive impact in that regard. It also would improve the living situations in many parts of the world where oil is imported. But it does have a negative impact, of course. It does have a negative impact, particularly on some of the oil-producing countries that are becoming increasingly source markets of the world. Because when economic situation as a result of the lowering oil prices becomes difficult in countries like that, the ability to travel from people of those countries becomes more challenging and more difficult. And this is not the problem of these particular countries only. It becomes the problem of the rest of the world that receives these visitors from the countries that I'm referring to. And I think you understand what I mean, and I think it will be felt, and it's already being felt in many parts of Europe, especially in the inflows of some of the citizens of countries that are producing oil. But all in all, the lowering of oil prices or the raising of it will have temporary effects on the overall traffic of travel and tourism, because it balances itself from one part of the world to another part of the world, and the negative and positive impacts will balance each other eventually.
Carmen Fuertes dice, como usted ha señalado, Fitur abrirá sus puertas una vez más a finales de este mes. ¿Qué expectativas tienen ustedes? ¿Sigue siendo Fitur el punto de encuentro, de referencia y de negocios en el sector? ¿Tienen ustedes indicadores acerca del volumen de las transacciones?
I think there are people in this room that are much more qualified than I am to talk about the volume of business transaction in Fitur. What I can talk about in Fitur is the fact that every year we see an increasing and a rising interest in being here and being seen here. It's become a must. It has definitely become a reference point. I'll just give you a very simple, small example. 3 years ago, I started a very simple tradition of inviting the last day of Fitur, which this year happens on Friday. Every year is on Friday, the last day of Fitur. Whoever is here of the ministers of tourism remains here after Fitur. I invite them usually to a casual, informal dinner. It started with 12 3 years ago. It was 26 last year, and it's going to be 45 this year. I don't know if we can afford them, but that just gives you an indication of how important, and very quickly, in the span of 3 years. And I'm using the minister's attendance just as an indicator of the growing political interest in Fitur. That's, of course, not to talk even more about the commercial and the business interest that is happening there. It is indeed becoming a reference point, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to Fitur. And it's very good, the timing of Fitur at the beginning of the year is very important. You know, some of these exhibits and fairs and events are not just to do business. They're very important psychologically, because it's the place where we renew hope with each other. You see each other there. You see, you gain strength from one another. When ministers are coming because they want to come, and businessmen are coming because they want to hear stories from others, they want to see each other in the same place. So to have a big event like this happen in January at the beginning of the year is very, very important, not just for the business aspect of it, but also for the uplifting of the spirits and the renewal of confidence in this industry.
Muchas gracias. Está con nosotros el presidente de IFEMA. ¿Quiere usted decir algo en relación con esta actividad?
Well, I really think it's not my turn today. I've been listening Mr. Rifai, that he always speaks with knowledge, and I think he knows more about those facts than me. But let me ask you something, Mr. Rifai. We have been talking, you have been talking about different things that happened in the last days in Europe. Well, I really think terrorism is bad for tourism and for everything, and especially for human beings. I think that's the first must of the situation. But do you think, I believe in that, do you think tourism is a peacemaker in the world? Do you think tourism and the increase of tourism helps to the different countries, the different people in the world to be more friends one to each other in a way to help really peace and to be against war? You think tourism is a way, is a road to that?
Muchas gracias, señor Cortés.
I completely believe in that. It doesn't happen overnight. Like any transformation, it's the accumulative effect of it. The more people come in touch with each other, the more people rub shoulders with each other, the more they understand each other. It does not happen overnight. It can also bring the worst out of us. But eventually, this movement of people all over the world, this intensity, what we call the travel revolution, is definitely going to reflect on bringing us more together and understanding each other more. When you visit a country, when you visit a destination, when you eat the food, when you drink the drink, when you listen to the music, when you listen to the stories, you cannot really come out of that by hating these people or having any feelings of resentment. It's only natural. Now, some minorities may have other feelings, but the overall impact, not of tourism per se, but of people meeting and encountering and interacting with other people, definitely is a positive force. And that's what tourism is all about. It's about encouraging people to travel to see other people. It changes not the way you see things only, but also the way the people that receive you see you and see what you come from. I think the number of countries that I have not visited are by far much less than the countries that are visited. And I can tell you, I have changed as a person myself. It does make you a different person, a more understanding, a more open-minded person. The more you travel, the more you become a tolerant, understanding, and respectful person. And that is a basic ingredient for peace. But again, as I said, it never happens overnight. It takes time. And the travel revolution did not start 100 years ago. It is a modern-day phenomenon of 30, 40 years only.
César Cortés le pregunta, ¿el ferrocarril es algo así como el patito feo en el reparto de los medios de transporte usados por los turistas junto con la navegación? ¿Qué cree que deberían hacer, por ejemplo, las autoridades europeas para agilizar la construcción y puesta en marcha de los grandes corredores ferroviarios transeuropeos previstos desde hace tiempo?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but it's basically, I'm assuming it's asking about how railroads can contribute more to connecting people with each other. Am I correct in this? I am correct.
Sí, pienso que sí, sí.
Yes.
En Europa en particular.
Well, you know, railroads are underutilized in tourism now. I'm delighted sometimes when I watch CNN and see the advertising about the Russian railroads ambassador. I think that we have lost some of the glamour of how beautiful it is to travel by train in favor of traveling by aeroplanes. We understand the efficiency of it. But I believe that there is much utilization in railroads that has not been put in place in favor of tourism particularly. We tend to forget that tourism started 150 years ago by railroads. The first travel group that Thomas Cook ever put together from the UK traveled by train to its destination. And I believe that Europe can do much more in connecting itself by railroad, especially Europe, because Europe's political system, Europe's economic system enables it to move freely from one country to another, the way it is today, and that is essential to making travel by trains a much more effective way. It's much more enjoyable, it's less stressful, and it's much more amenable to imaginative products and enjoyment. And I would certainly hope to see more serious efforts being done, much more serious efforts being done to connect Europe with each other by trains. Anytime I have a chance to visit any Spanish city by train, I use the train, I don't use the plane. Nothing against aeroplanes, to the contrary. I love Iberia in particular, but it's much more enjoyable, definitely. And it takes me faster to a destination now, especially with the high-speed trains.
José Antonio Vidal, presidente de la Asociación Iberoamericana de No Turismo, dice: el turismo y el vino son generadores de riqueza en varios países iberoamericanos. ¿Tiene previsto la OMT algún tipo de acción para el respaldo al sector enoturístico e incluso para su promoción? Mario Sequerra, de Atlas Gourmet, dice: ¿está de acuerdo con que el turismo y la gastronomía deben ir juntos?
Well, thank you for putting these two questions together, because they definitely connect with each other. Tourism has more and more now being focused on the experience as opposed to simply the visual impact. 30, 40 years ago, people would travel in a bus, 40 people put in a bus, and being taken to Tour Eiffel or Louvre or any of the museums here in Madrid, and then let down for half an hour or 45 minutes, go run around, see the place and come back, take pictures and go home and tell your people, I was there. Today, this model has changed completely. Authenticity and experience are what matters. People are not satisfied anymore with being boxed. They want to interact with the people. They want to eat the food. They want to listen to the music. They want to talk to the waiters. They want to talk to the restaurant owners. They want to engage in a real experience of knowing the place and experiencing it. And that is precisely why gastronomy and wine has become a very important part of the experience itself. But the second very important thing about wines in particular is the stories of wine that are connected with that. In Latin America in particular, in Southern America, we're working together with many countries to establish what we call the wine routes, which can take you from one destination to another to follow a certain story, just like all other routes. So both gastronomy and wine are becoming more and more an integral part of the new trends in tourism, which is basically to experience an authentic time and to have engagement with the people and the culture. Wine is part of your culture. It's not just part of good taste. It's knowing Spain is knowing the wines of Spain. Knowing France is knowing the wine of... You cannot understand Spain if you don't understand the wines of Rioja and Riviera de Duero. It's part of your lives. It's part of your being. Drinking and eating the tapas and enjoying the wonderful gastronomy of Spain is the only way you can understand the people and you can understand the culture. And this is what tourists are seeking nowadays.
Vamos a finalizar con estas dos cuestiones que son de contenido distinto. Luis Antonio Díaz dice: la OMT y UNESCO están organizando la primera conferencia mundial de turismo cultural que se organizará el próximo mes en Camboya. ¿Aprovecha España, en su opinión, suficientemente las fortalezas y potencialidades de su patrimonio cultural, histórico, gastronómico, como usted ha señalado antes? Luis Angulo, bueno, esta se la voy a dar de regalo después para finalizar. Amparo Palazón, las cifras de turismo por razones de salud siguen subiendo en España, turismo sanitario. ¿Hay maneras de evitar que esto sea a costa de las aportaciones de las empresas y de los ciudadanos españoles a la seguridad social?
The first question is easy. I'm not sure about the second. The connection between culture and tourism is also a new discovery of travelers, I would say. Of course, tourism started 150 years ago by some privileged, rich Europeans particularly, wanting to travel to exotic countries to experience the cultural aspects to know more about the other people. But then, 50, 60, 70 years after that, it faded away, and the prominence became more to mass tourism and more of sun and beach and leisure tourism. Now there's a rediscovery to the roots and the origin of tourism, which is basically the connection between culture and tourism. And the way I see it is very simple. Culture is always the storyteller of any society. Tangible and intangible culture. You read, you understand the people through their culture. If culture is the storyteller, tourism is the publisher and the distributor of the story. It's as simple as that. Culture has no value if it's not enjoyed, if it's not experienced, if it's not seen by others. And it's tourism that does that. That's precisely, we came together with our sister organization, UNESCO, to organize the first ever meeting of ministers of tourism and ministers of culture of the world in Cambodia and Siem Reap. We will meet next month in February, first week of February, under the patronage of the Director General of UNESCO, myself, and the two organizations are hosting this meeting. We hope to revive this interest in this. Is Spain utilizing that? Absolutely. Actually, Spain is leading the way in this. As I said before, the redirection of Spanish emphasis, Spanish tourism emphasis, from sun and beach into the inlands, into the pueblos, into the richness, into the real authenticity of Spain, has been now imitated by so many other countries all over the world. I believe it is. Can it do more? Of course it can do more. But it has started the way, it has paved the way to do that. So it is very important. Now about the second question, I understand the part related to health tourism because it's a major component of tourism. There are many destinations all over the world now that are building their claim to fame in providing what we don't call it medical tourism as such, we call it wellness, which is a complete package of not just going to a hospital to make an operation, although that's part of it, but it's the spas, the wellness, the whole package of feeling better about going to a place. And I think you'd even have in Spain a few very important outlets to that along the coastal line and inland, where you have a lot of very important wellness centers. But how does that relate, and how can that lead to having Spanish people not pay for their medical insurance or their medical services? I don't understand. I don't see the link unless I understood the question wrongly from the interpretation, which I doubt, because it has been excellent interpretation so far.
Luis Angulo, luego se lo explico. Luis Angulo dice, ¿en algún momento se ha pensado en replantear la sede de la OMT en España, por ejemplo, dispersando y deslocalizando sus diferentes servicios y unidades hacia otros países? ¿Han recibido ustedes propuestas en este sentido por parte de Estados miembros de la OMT? Para terminar, no está nada mal, señor Rifai.
Never. Nobody thought about it. Nobody would dare thinking about it. Spain is the most appropriate place for a tourism organization of the United Nations for many reasons. Because it's the United Nations and the special role of Spain in the UN, and because it's tourism. France can claim to be the cultural capital of the world by having UNESCO. And Rome can claim whatever it wants to claim, and Vienna can claim whatever it wants to claim, and Geneva. But this is the capital of the world tourism here in Madrid, and it will remain like this.
Eso era justo lo que queríamos oír. Muchas gracias, doctor Rifai. En nombre de Red Eléctrica de España, ABT y Asisa, don Ramón Casanova, director de esta entidad, despedirá el acto brevemente. Gracias.
Muy buenos días. En primer lugar, darle las gracias al señor Rifai por su presentación muy técnica en lo que concierne al turismo y también política en relación con el mensaje de paz, progreso social y respeto a los derechos humanos que nos ha expuesto. Hay algo que trasciende al mensaje verbal del doctor Rifai y que el presentador, señor Ibáñez, ha subrayado como dos puntos fuertes del señor Rifai: su extrema amabilidad y su respeto hacia los demás. Concierne esta actitud también al hecho turístico en lo que tiene de contacto entre las personas. Muchas gracias, señor Rifai, por su brillante presentación, y don Ignacio Ibáñez, muchas gracias también por su detallada y afectuosa presentación del señor Rifai. Aprovecho, además, para darle las gracias y felicitarle por sus esfuerzos para entrar a España en el Consejo de Seguridad de las Naciones Unidas y el éxito obtenido. Muchas gracias a todos ustedes por su asistencia.